If you fish still waters, then this is one fly you should never be without. To tie it, we'll start off with some black silk thread. Snip the excess free. Grabbing some red crystal flash, we'll select a single strand and secure it to the hook shank. And continue wrapping backwards towards the bend of the hook. At which point, we'll reverse our thread's direction and start to work back up towards the head of the fly, taking care to leave an extremely smooth base. That'll not only help with our profile, but also the next step. We'll continue doing so until we reach the hook eye. At which point, we'll grab a red crystal flash, pull it tight so it's not all twisted up, and begin wrapping it forward in open spirals, taking care to make sure they're evenly spaced and not overlapping, and continue wrapping it forward in open spirals until you reach your thread. At which point, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind and snipping your excess free. At which point, we'll straighten our hook out, wrap back up towards the head of the fly, and grab some hollow tinsel. Here I'm using medium in the color red. We'll place a single strand on our thread, sliding it up towards the head of the fly. Here we'll secure it in place, pulling it downwards so it secures from the top of the fly and begins working towards the bottom. If you have a rotating vise, flipping it upside down will help you see your progress. Continue securing it in place till both strands are facing underneath the fly, and continue wrapping backwards till you reach roughly your hook point. With this complete, we can flip our fly back over and begin building up a bulk of thread at the head of our fly between our hollow tinsel and the hook eye. To do so, we'll want to take our time, narrowing it out on both sides, the one facing the hook eye, as well as the one facing our flash. Doing so by wrapping more times towards the center, building up a bump in the middle of these sections. I've selected to use an extremely small thread that you can find linked in the comments here to give a nice profile to the back, but using a thicker one will speed this up. With this complete, we'll grab our hollow tinsel, fold it over, and secure it tightly to the top of your fly, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind our hollow tinsel before snipping the excess free. We'll whip finish to hold everything in place and simultaneously cover up our tag ends to give the head a nice clean look. Pull it tight and snip your excess free. At which point, we'll face our hook downwards again, covering just the back of the fly with some UV resin. For this, I'd highly recommend using solar res that's linked in the comments below. Create a small coat over the back of the fly and secure it in place with a UV light. Next, we'll reorient our fly and add a layer of UV resin, this time to just the head section. Here, we'll just create a small layer before fixing it in place. Before coming back, this time with a little bit more UV resin and painting it over the head of the fly, building up the shape. Fix it in place with a UV light. And this is a buzzer, or a chronomidge pattern that is not only extremely successful in stillwater fishing, but it's also extremely fun to tie. I like to tie them in red, as well as silver, and some other attractor patterns. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. We're going to be tying a realistic mealworm that is sure to catch you some fish. We'll start off with some tan thread, secure it to our hook shank, and snap the excess free. We'll continue wrapping back well into the bend of our hook, before reversing our thread's direction back up towards the hook point. Here, we'll select one strand of thread and secure it to our hook shank. Here I'm using a tan 140 ultra thread. Continue to secure it backwards to the back of the fly, before bringing your thread forward once again and grab some latex. This one's from the Flysmith in the color translucent. Secure the latex tightly to the hook shank, once again wrapping backwards towards the back of our fly. At which point, we'll bring our thread forward, this time all the way up to the hook eye, creating a smooth transition forward for our next steps. And if you'd like to win this fly, comment #flies in the comments below. With this complete, we'll grab a caramel marker and paint over our thread to give it a slightly better color, and also add some texture by leaving some parts of the thread uncolored. At which point, we'll grab our latex and begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, Don't overwrap the latex too much. Each wrap of the latex should start where there's only a previous single layer of latex. If you look close, you can see the transition from the last layer. This will help create some segmentation while not building up too much bulk for this particular pattern. We'll secure the latex tightly in place by taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, pulling it tight and snipping it free. Secure your tag ends tightly in place and wrap back on the latex slightly. At which point we'll grab our thread and begin to wrap it forward in open spirals, using your thread to wrap between each segmented part of the latex. This will increase the segmented look, but also the character of our fly, as you'll see in the next steps. Continue to wrap it forward until you reach your thread, secure, and snip the excess free. At this point, we'll grab a brown Sharpie and paint over our latex. But the thread that we just laid down will absorb some of this color and help give the body a segmented look. With this complete, we'll use our fingers to remove as much of the brown as we can, before once again grabbing our caramel marker. Once again painting over the latex, giving it a mealworm-like appearance. With this complete, we'll switch back to our brown marker, touching up the tail to give it a slightly darker appearance, before grabbing some UV resin, painting it all over to increase the pattern's durability, as well as give it some shine. Fix it in place with a UV light, and grab a smaller piece of latex, snipping a small triangle in it, coloring it in slightly, and securing it to the head of our fly. With this complete, we'll grab some brown hare's ear, creating a small dubbing noodle that will wrap just in front of the latex. This step can help mimic the legs, but is completely optional if you prefer the sleeker look. However, it wouldn't be a mainly outdoors pattern if it didn't have a nice, buggy look. Once the fly is thoroughly brushed out, we'll then color in our thread with the brown Sharpie before folding over our latex and securing it tightly in place, taking thread wraps both behind as well as in front before snipping the excess free. Coloring in the latex with your caramel Sharpie. We'll then grab some UV resin, painting it over the back of our fly as well as on our thread before whip finishing to hold it all in place. Snip your thread free, and this is a pretty simple, realistic mealworm. You can fish it like this, or add some weight under it to increase how fast it sinks. Thank you guys for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
We're going to be tying up a favorite of mine for fall brook trout and salmon. To start this pattern, we'll grab some black UTC and secure that to our hook shank. Cut the excess free and continue wrapping to the bend of our hook. Next, we can grab some silver wire. Here I'm using brassy, securing it tightly to the back of the fly. As the body, you can use a gold or silver tinsel, but I like to use this flashier hollow tinsel. Secure this to the back of the fly. Once complete, we can start to build up the body. We want to create a nice smooth transition towards the head of the fly. Next, we'll put in a couple turn whip finish, set our thread aside. If you have a rotating vise, this makes things easier. However, it's not necessary. Simply wrap the tinsel forward up the body of our fly in touching spirals. Do so until you reach your thread. At this point, we'll secure tightly, taking wraps both in front as well as behind and snipping the tinsel free. We can then grab our silver wire and begin to wrap this in open spirals towards the head of the fly. You want to take your time to make sure that the wraps are evenly spaced. This step will add some additional durability to our tinsel and also give it a nice 3D look. Secure by taking thread wraps both in front and behind, and helicoptering free. Next, we'll grab some yellow marabou, select a few fibers, and measure them to be about 1¼ hook shanks in length. Secure it tightly to the head of our fly, and snip the excess free at an angle. Clean up the head a little bit, and then grab a red marabou feather. Once again, we'll select a few fibers, matching the length of our yellow feathers. Snip the excess free at an angle, clean up the head slightly, and then grab some yellow marabou to top it all off. Once again, securing this and snipping the excess free. We'll then take our time cleaning up any visible feathers towards the head of our fly. Once complete, we'll grab a whip finisher, securing everything in place, and then we'll add some UV resin. This will increase the durability as well as give it a nice smooth look. Once happy, we'll secure with the UV light, and that is the Marabou Mickey fin. These colors work very well for brook trout and salmon in the fall. If you want to try to win this fly, you can view the comments below for more details. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
This fly pattern is 100 years old and still catches fish. To tie it, we'll start off with some black thread, secure it to our hook shank, wrapping towards the bend of our hook. At which point we'll grab a rooster cape, here I'm using brown, select a single feather and strip some of the fibers free, securing it tightly to the back of your hook. Continue wrapping your thread forward towards the hook point, grabbing your feather and beginning to palmer it forward in close touching spirals, doing so until you reach your thread. At which point we'll secure. Snip the excess free, brushing everything backwards and wrapping back on it slightly to give it a nice brush back look. At which point we'll grab some extra small wire, here I'm using green, secure it to your hook shank, wrapping back towards your hackle. We'll then grab some peacock curl, select 2 fibers, securing them to the hook shank, once again wrapping back towards your hackle. With this complete, bring your thread forward, halfway up the hook shank, and begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals towards your thread. You can double the peacock curl back on itself, helping to add some bulk, adding as much or as little as you'd like. Once happy, secure with your thread, taking thread wraps both in front of the peacock curl, as well as in back, and snipping the excess free. With this complete, we'll grab our wire and begin to wrap it forward in open spirals. This will help add durability to our pattern. Secure with your thread, taking thread wraps both in front, as well as behind, and helicoptering the excess free. We'll then grab another rooster cape, this time in grizzly, select a single fiber, and secure it to the head of our fly. With this complete, we'll begin to hackle it forward in close touching spirals until we reach our thread. At which point we'll secure. Pull everything backwards, wrapping back on it slightly to help brush everything back, and snip the excess free. And this is the Renegade, an extremely old fly pattern that I still like to carry in my fly box, working exceptionally well to imitate a variety of insects. However, I typically like to use it for midges. And if you'd like to win this one, comment #flies in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. If you're fishing for wintertime trout, then this midge is a must-have. We'll start off with some white thread, secure it to our hook shank, snap the excess free, and grab some extra small black wire. Insert the wire into the bead and secure it tightly in place with your thread, continuing to secure it well into the hook bend. And if you'd like to win this fly, comment #flies in the comments below. We'll then grab some flat blue thread, securing it to your hook shank and wrapping back towards our wire. With this complete, we'll begin building up a transition towards the head of our fly. Doing so by wrapping up towards the hook point, doubling back on your thread till you almost reach your starting position, and returning back up to the hook point. With this complete, we'll whip finish, snip our thread free, grabbing our blue thread and beginning to wrap it forward up towards the head of our fly. With this complete, we'll whip finish, snip our thread free, swapping back out for our white thread.
With this complete, we'll grab our black wire and beginning to wrap it forward in open spirals in order to add a segmented look. Doing so until we reach our thread, at which point we'll secure, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire and helicoptering the excess free. We'll then grab some blue ice dubbing along with a small amount of black hare's ear. Create a dubbing noodle and begin wrapping it just in front of your hook point, creating a buildup of dubbing, followed by a dubbing noodle of black hare's ear. We'll brush this one out in order to give it a buggy look. Wrap this just in front of your blue dubbing ball, finishing with one thread wrap in front. We'll give it a brush back look. With this complete, we'll brush everything out to give it a nice, buggy look. We'll then grab a blue Sharpie, color in our thread, and whip finish to hold everything in place. Snip your thread free, and this is a blue midge that I like to place behind a tractor pattern in the winter months. Thank you for watching, and if you'd like to stock up your fly box for the winter, you can visit our website listed below. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Are you tired of your friends making fun of you for fishing your egg patterns? Well then this fly is for you. To tie it, we'll start off with some black thread and an oversized orange bead. We'll insert a lead-free wire into our bead to help hold it in place. Secure tightly with your thread and helicopter the excess free. We'll continue building up a thread dam just behind our bead and grab some brassy wire. Here I'm using silver. Insert the wire into our bead and secure it tightly with your thread, continuing to wrap towards the bend of our hook, stopping just before the start of the bend, at which point we'll reverse our thread's direction, ensuring that we have tight thread wraps to smooth out our body, and continue to do so until you reach the bead, at which point we'll grab our thread and begin to wrap it forward, starting with a close spiral at the beginning of the fly, after which opening it up to open spirals and continuing to do so until we reach our thread. At which point, we'll secure the wire in place by taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire and helicoptering the excess free. We'll then grab some peacock herl, select a single strand, and secure it to the head of our fly. Wrap your thread forward and begin hackling the peacock forward in close touching spirals until you reach your thread. With this complete, we'll secure the peacock herl in place and snip the excess free. And this is a fast sinking egg pattern disguised as a zebra midge. I'd highly suggest adding a few to your fly box for that fast moving water or pocket water trout. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Fish can't resist this incredibly simple fly pattern. To tie it, we'll start off with some gray thread, secure it to our hook shank, and snap the excess free. We'll continue laying down a thread base for our next step. Grab some lead-free wire and secure it tightly to the hook shank. With this complete, we'll begin wrapping our wire forward in close touching spirals. You can add a single layer or two if you need it to sink faster. Continue doing so until you reach your thread. At which point, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire and helicoptering the excess free. With this complete, we'll use our thread to secure the wire tightly in place, creating a thread dam both in front as well as behind the wire. And if you'd like to enter a competition showing off your fly tying skills, you can visit our Discord link below for the Holiday Fly Tying Challenge. We'll wrap back to the bend of our hook and grab some hare's ear dubbing. You can add more texture to your dubbing by selecting a few different colors. Here I've grabbed a brown as well as a black, mixing them together to create our dubbing blend before creating a dubbing noodle on our thread. With this complete, we'll begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, building up a transition towards the head of the fly, tightening or adding more dubbing as needed. Once complete, we'll brush it all back and add a few thread wraps at the head of our fly, and of course brush it out to give it a nice, buggy look. Whip finish to create a prominent head and hold it all together. Snip your thread free, adding some UV resin to the head of the fly to help increase its durability. And this is the original Walt's worm, a simple fly pattern that's incredibly productive in the water. And if you'd like to win this one, comment #flies in the comments below. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. We're going to be tying up a simple to make saltwater streamer. To tie it, we'll start off with some white thread, secure it to our hook shank, and snap the excess free. We'll then grab some holographic tinsel. Here I'm using red. Secure it to our hook shank, wrapping backwards, slightly into the bend of our hook. At which point, we'll reverse our thread's direction back up towards the head of the fly, laying an even thread base for our following steps. And if you'd like to win this fly, comment #flies in the comments below. And if you don't win and would like to try some out, you can pick some up by submitting this custom order form here. Once we reach the head of the fly, we'll whip finish, set our thread aside, grabbing our holographic tinsel and wrapping it forward in close touching spirals, slightly overlapping the previous wrap. You can do this by just wrapping it around the hook. However, it's much easier if you have a rotary vise. However you do it, continue wrapping it forward until you reach your thread. At which point, we'll secure the holographic tinsel in place, taking thread wraps both in front, as well as behind, and snipping your excess free. We'll then paint it over with some UV resin to add some shine and durability to our pattern. Fix it in place with the UV light, wrapping back on it slightly to lay down a base for our following steps. We'll then grab some bucktail, here I'm using white, snip a small clump free, and measure it to be about 2 times the hook shank in length. Take one wrap around your material prior to securing it to the top side of your hook shank. This will help ensure that your deer hair doesn't spin around your hook. Before securing it down tightly in place, snip the excess free. Secure your tag ends tightly, taking a few wraps behind the bucktail, helping to prop it up and give it a better look. At which point, we'll grab some angel hair, securing it to one side of your fly, before folding it over and securing it on the other. Snipping it to length and whip finishing to hold it all together. Snip your thread free and paint over the side of the fly with some super glue. We'll use this to secure some eyes in place. Here I'm using living eyes in the color fire. Secure them to either side and add some UV resin to both the upper side as well as the under. Fix in place with a UV light, and this is a simple saltwater minnow that's made to imitate small baitfish. This is one of my particular favorite variations. However, you can tie it in a variety of colors to match your local forage. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
Today we're going to be making a fly that catches fish and is excellent for the beginner tyer. To start this pattern, we'll use some black Vivus thread. Continue wrapping till you reach the bend of your hook. Now here we will build up a small thread dam. This will be useful in the next step. Grab some brown biots. We'll select 2 individual biots, placing them into a V shape, each splaying outward. Measure these to be roughly the size of your hook shank, and transfer the measurement to the back of the fly. We will secure them tightly, wrapping back onto the thread dam that we created. This will help splay the tips of the biot outward, giving them a stonefly-like look. Further secure the biots by wrapping up towards the bead. This will start to build up our body. Cut the excess free, and grab some brass wire. Here I'm using brassy. Insert the wire into the slot of our bead, secure it, wrapping backwards towards the biots. Once completed, we'll wrap our thread forward, leaving it just behind the bead of our fly. We'll grab our brassy wire and begin to wrap this forward in touching spirals. If you leave a gap in your wire, just as I've done here, there's no reason to worry about it. The fish don't care and will still happily take this pattern. However, by pulling your wire slightly backwards on each wrap, it's more likely to fall into place adjacent to the next one, creating a much more smooth finish. We'll continue wrapping our wire forward until we reach our thread, at which point we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and helicoptering the excess free. We'll grab a single piece of peacock herl, attach that to the head of our fly, securing tightly, returning our thread back to the bead. We'll begin to hackle this around the thorax towards the head of our fly. Once we reach the thread, we can secure, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, snipping the excess free. Whip finishing to complete this pattern. Not only does this pattern catch fish, but it also teaches you a lot of fundamentals about fly tying. If you thought about getting into it, or are just starting, this would be a great place to begin. And if you'd like to support the channel while gathering the materials you need, I have linked that in the description below. And I will see you in the next one.
While this fly is nearing 100 years old, this fly still catches fish. To tie it, we'll start off with some black thread, secure it to our hook shank, and wrap towards the bend of our hook. Here, we'll grab some red saddle feathers, strip free a small clump, and secure it to the back of the fly. Continue securing your tag ends to the hook shank, and snip your excess free. Cover up your tag ends, bring your thread forward. Next, we'll grab some gold wire, secure it to our hook shank, and wrap backwards just to the start of our tail. Bringing our thread forward, back up to the head of the fly. Here, we'll grab some yellow chenille, securing it to the head of the fly, securing it backwards towards our tail. With this complete, we'll further secure the chenille in place, ensuring it can't be pulled free, finishing with our thread towards the head of the fly. At which point, we'll grab our chenille and begin wrapping it forward in close touching spirals, doing so until we reach our thread. At which point, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snip your excess free. Cover up your tag ends, laying down a thread base for our following steps, grabbing your wire, and counter-wrapping the chenille, this time in open spirals. This will add some segmentation, shine, and durability to our fly pattern. Once we reach our thread, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind our wire, before helicoptering the excess free. Continue laying down a thread base for our following steps, covering up any tag ends in the process, before grabbing a natural colored bucktail. We'll flip it over and use some of the natural fibers found on the back of the tail. Snip a small clump free, pulling out the under fur with a dubbing brush, and secure it to the top side of your fly by taking a loop around it before tightening it in place, helping it to stay positioned on the top side of your fly. With this complete, we'll secure it tightly in place with our thread, and snip your excess free. Cover up your tag ends, building up a large head at the head of our fly. While this pattern is normally tied with a yellow thread, I prefer the darker contrasted look, and it's one of the few patterns that I think looks quite well with a large head. Next, we'll then grab some more saddle feathers. This time we're using yellow, stripping a small clump free, and this time securing it to the underside of our fly. Secure tightly in place, with the feathers reaching just about to the hook point, before snipping your excess free. Cover up your tag ends, and continue building up the head of the fly. With this complete, we'll whip finish, holding it all together, snip our thread free, and painting it over with some UV resin. That'll both add durability to the head of our fly, but also give it an extremely smooth look. Fix in place with a UV light, and this, while counterintuitive from the light tiger, is Edison's dark tiger, getting the name from the wing color instead of the body. But it's a productive pattern that can work well as a streamer, tied in larger sizes, or, as I like to fish it, a wet fly tied in these smaller sizes. Either way, it's a classic fly pattern that is sure to catch you some fish. With spring on the way, if you'd like to stock up your fly box for the fall season, you can visit my website listed below. And as always, thank you for watching. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
If you're new to fly tying, this video is for you. We're going to be tying a brassy that only requires 2 materials. We'll start off with some flat black thread and attach that to our hook shank. Snap the excess free. Next, use some lead-free wire to prevent your bead from spinning. Helicopter free, move back up to the head of the fly, and grab some brassy wire. This one in particular is in copper. Attach our brassy wire to the hook shank and wrap back towards the bend of the hook. We'll want to stop just before the hook shank starts to bend. Next, we'll move our thread back up the fly, creating a nice smooth base for our wire. Whip finish, and move our thread off to the side. We'll wrap our brassy wire up the fly in closed spirals, so we don't want any of the underbody to show. If you have a rotating vise, it's much easier, but not necessary. We'll stop just before reaching the bead. Secure our wire by taking wraps both in front and behind, and then helicoptering the wire free. Next, we can grab some peacock herl. We're only going to use a single strand. Attach that to our exposed thread and wrap slightly onto our wire. Then we can hackle our peacock feather just behind the bead. Once complete, we will secure, taking wraps in front as well as behind the feather, and snapping the excess free. This is a quick, easy tie that is great for beginners, and it just so happens that fish love it too. If you don't feel like tying it, you can always visit my website and I'll be happy to send some your way. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you in the next one.
We're going to be tying up one of my favorite attractor variants of this extremely successful competition fly. We'll start off with some black thread, inserting some lead-free wire into our bead, secure it in place tightly, and helicopter your excess free, at which point we'll continue wrapping backwards towards the bend of our hook and grab some black feathers. We'll secure a small clump to the back of our fly, making up the tail, wrapping backwards towards the bend of our hook, before reversing our direction, securing the tag ends up towards the bead. This will help build up an even transition of her body. Snip the excess free and grab some tinsel. Here I'm using medium in the color purple. Snip a small piece free, securing it to the head of the fly, before wrapping backwards until we reach our tail. And if you'd like to win this fly, comment #flies in the comments below. And if you want to help support the channel, you can pick up some fly boxes if you don't tie, or submit a custom order form and I'll tie up whatever flies you're looking for. We'll continue building up a transition towards the head of the fly by wrapping forward, reversing our direction almost back to the starting point, and wrapping your thread back up to the head, continuing to do so until we're happy with our transition. You can build this up into a strong carrot shape. However, I think these flies work particularly well when left slender. We'll finish up by wrapping up towards the head of the fly, grabbing our tinsel and wrapping it forward in close touching spirals, and continue to do so until you reach your thread. At which point, we'll secure it in place, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind, and snipping the excess free. Cover up your tag ends and build up a slight base of our black thread. While I like to keep mine black, this is typically used to build up a hot spot, and you can swap this out for whatever color you'd like. With this complete, snip our thread free and paint it over with some UV resin. Here I'm using solar res in bone dry. Paint over the entirety of the body before fixing it in place with a UV light. At which point, we'll add a small drop to the back of the fly, filling in our bead, secure it in place with the UV light, and while it doesn't show through with my bead choice and black collar, if you use different colors, you can create a darker look to clear UV finish by taking a black Sharpie, coloring it over before letting it dry, and adding another drop of UV resin. Smooth it out before fixing it in place. And this is a purple paragon, a favorite of mine to use in dark and dirty waters, or just use as an attractor, and I'd highly suggest giving it a try. And you don't have to take my word for it. You can find it in all competition anglers fly boxes. And as always, thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
This is a fly that's very popular in my home waters, but relatively unknown everywhere else. We'll start this pattern by grabbing some red UTC and securing it to our hook shank. Snip the excess free and continue wrapping your thread to the bend of the hook. We will then grab some ginger marabou, securing it tightly to the back of the fly. In order to build up the body, we'll fold over the marabou, wrap our thread forward, and then fold the marabou back towards the bead, securing it in place. Further secure the marabou to your hook shank, and this is a quick way to build up a body. Snip the excess free and grab some gold staz. Pulling off the tips, exposing the braided line, and secure it to the back of the fly. Once complete, we will start to wrap our thread forward, taking time to completely cover any exposed feathers. This is a key step in producing this pattern. Once complete, we will grab our gold staz and begin wrapping it forward in open spirals, using your fingers to pull the staz backwards each wrap to ensure you don't trap any underneath. Once at the bead, we will secure the staz in place, taking wraps both in front and behind, snipping the excess free. We can then grab a whip finisher and build up a prominent band at the head of our fly. This is a hot spot that's very characteristic of this pattern. And this is the golden retriever. Originally invented for panfish, it is also extremely successful for trout and salmon. If you'd like to try this fly, but don't tie yourself, you can visit my website listed below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. We're going to be tying a simple and effective baitfish. Start this pattern, we'll grab some white 140 ultra thread, secure it tightly to our hook shank, and snip the excess free. Continue wrapping back till you reach the bend of the hook, and grab some white marabou. We'll measure this out to be a bit longer than our hook shank and secure it to the back of the fly. We'll then fold over the marabou, wrap our thread forward, folding the marabou back over and securing it to our hook shank. This step helps to keep the body of the fly nice and uniform while further securing the marabou. Once complete, we'll snip the excess free and grab some silver hollow tinsel. Secure about 8 fibers tightly to one side of our fly, snip the excess free, and do the same with the other side. We'll now snip these to length, leaving them to be just a bit longer than our marabou. We'll wrap our thread forward to the hook eye, smoothing out the body as needed. Put in a 3-turn whip finish, and if you have a rotary vise, set your thread to the side. We'll begin wrapping our hollow tinsel forward to the hook eye. You want to do so in a closed spiral, making sure to cover up any of our thread below. Secure, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind and snipping the excess free. We can then whip finish, cutting our thread free. We'll grab 2 eyes. I like to use red or yellow to add a bit of a hot spot. Add some UV resin to the side of the fly and place the eye on top of it. Secure with a UV light, doing the same to the other side. If you've ever been curious as to what resin I use, I prefer to use solar res, as it cures tack-free and doesn't yellow over time. We will then start to fill in our fly with UV resin, and we'll start at the head of the fly. This is the most important part, and you should take your time while doing so. Fill in the eyes, giving it a nice rounded shape, securing with the UV light once happy. We'll continue adding UV resin in small layers as it's easier to work with and creates a smoother finish. Now with the base, we will continue building up the head of our fly, keeping it nice and rounded. Once happy, we'll once again secure with a UV light and begin to work on our body, filling it in with UV resin. Once again, we'll start with small layers and build up as we go. Once we've laid a base, we will secure it in place and come back in with some more resin to build out the body. Now that we have a good base layer, we can use our rotating vise to help build up a body of resin. Secure it once happy, and finish it off by adding a little bit extra to the back of the fly. And this is a version of a surf candy that I like to call the glass minnow. Some of you have asked if there's other ways to support the channel because you don't fish, and I do have merchandise if you would like. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.
This fly pattern only requires one material and is sure to catch you some fish. To tie it, we'll insert a lead-free wire into our bead, secure tightly, and helicopter the excess free, at which point we'll lay down a thread base, wrapping back towards the bend of our hook, before wrapping forward, back up towards the bead. We'll then grab some egg yarn, here I'm using orange, and secure it tightly to the head of our fly. With this secured, we'll add some extra bulk by wrapping our egg yarn around the hook shank, and fold it over to create a loop. Secure the loop in place using your thread, securing both in front of the yarn as well as behind, before snipping it free, leaving some extra material. Using this material to create a veil, spreading it over our loop, brushing it backwards, and securing it tightly in place, and whip finish to hold it all together. And this is a simple egg pattern that only takes a couple seconds to tie, so tie it up in all your favorite colors, and it'll be sure to catch you some fish. And the best part about it is the more chewed up it gets, the better it looks. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. This wire worm is so simple and effective, it might actually get banned. To tie it, we won't even start out with thread, we'll actually lay down a base of super glue, followed by some medium red wire. Start your wire well into the bend of the hook, and begin to wrap it forward in close touching spirals, trying to ensure that no gaps are left behind. Continue to do this until you reach the eye of your hook, at which point you can cut it free and super glue it in place, or secure on some red thread. Use your thread to help secure the wire in place, securing both in front as well as behind your wire, and helicoptering the excess free. At which point we'll whip finish to hold the thread in place, after which we'll coat it in some UV resin to add some shine and durability to our pattern. Next, we'll use the back of our scissors to cut the excess wire free. You can also do this in the front as well, and grab some more thread in a hotspot color. Here I've selected to use pink, however you can use any color you choose, and continue building up a prominent hotspot just slightly forward of the middle of your fly. You can make this as large or as small as you'd like. Once happy, we'll whip finish, snip our thread free, and paint it over with some UV resin to add some shine and durability to our thread wraps. Fix in place with the UV light, and finish coating the red wire of your worm, again to add durability and shine to our pattern. And this is a wired bloodworm, and while it can be tied without thread wraps, in doing so, technically it wouldn't even be a fly. And while it doesn't have as much movement as other worm patterns, it is one of the most durable ones out there, and still can trick some fish. And if you'd like to win this one, comment #flies in the comments below. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. You won't believe what this egg pattern looks like once wet. But first, to tie it, we'll start off by securing our thread just in front of our pink bead. Next, we'll help secure the bead in place by taking some wraps around it, securing both in front as well as behind, ensuring that it stays locked in place. At which point, we'll grab some egg foam, here I'm using the color cream, securing a small clump facing back towards our bead, before securing our tag ends tightly in place. With this complete, we'll fold over our foam, taking a few additional wraps over the top of it. Next, we'll grab another small clump of foam, securing it tightly to the underside of the fly pattern, and once again, securing our tag ends tightly. With this complete, we'll wrap our thread behind the bead, before grabbing the egg yarn and stretching it out slightly. Next, we'll use our fingers to help rotate it around the fly, pushing back on it slightly to give it a round appearance. Once happy, use your thread to loosely secure it in place, helping to maintain its rounded shape to give it a nice, rounded look. Secure tightly in place, snip the excess free, and whip finish to hold it all together, and paint it over with some UV resin to add some increased durability. And this is an extremely fast sinking variation of the nuclear egg, a pattern that's known to be exceptionally realistic that becomes quite obvious once you get the pattern wet. And if you don't tie and want to help support the channel, you can find these on my website listed below. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. This is an extremely popular Netherlands fly pattern, and today, I'm going to show you how to tie it. We'll start off by securing some thread to our hook shank and snapping the excess free. Continue wrapping backwards until you reach the bend of your hook and grab a brown cape. select a single feather and strip a few fibers free, measuring it to be about half the length of your hook shank. Transfer your measurement to the back of the fly and secure it tightly in place. Continue securing it up the hook shank and snip the excess free. We'll then secure our tag ends tightly in place, wrapping back to the bend of our hook. Here, we'll grab some saddle hackle. Here I'm using brown. Select a single fiber, stripping some of the feathers away. We'll use this as a tie-in point to secure it tightly to our hook shank. Snip the excess free, wrapping backwards towards the bend of our hook. We'll then select some dubbing. Here I'm using a synthetic dry fly dubbing with some addition of some UV fibers. Create a dubbing noodle and begin to wrap this forward in close touching spirals, creating a slight transition as we work towards the head of the fly. Continuing to tighten, we're adding dubbing as needed. With this complete, we're brushing it out to give it a nice, buggy look. We'll then begin palmering our saddle hackle forward in open spirals, maintaining even spacing between each wrap. And as a reminder, this is part of a series showcasing some of the most popular flies in various countries. Last time there was some confusion, as I haven't been to many of these countries, and there's no such thing as a national fly pattern online. I don't necessarily know all the most popular flies across the world. So if you want to see yours featured, comment the pattern, maker, and why it's one of the most popular fly patterns in your area. Once we reach our thread, we'll use it to secure the saddle hackle tightly in place before snipping the excess free. We'll then grab a brown colored Sharpie, color in our thread, and whip finishing to secure everything in place and create a small head to our fly. Snip your thread free, and this is the brown palmer. Thank you guys for watching, and remember, if you want to help support my channel, you can visit my website to pick up some fly boxes, or if you don't tie, some flies to stock up your fly box for next year. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. Today, we're going to be tying a saltwater worm that you surf fishermen won't want to be without. To tie it, we'll start off with two 4.5mm tungsten beads, or whatever weight you need to get it in the strike zone. Secure your thread just behind it before placing your thumb on one of the beads to help lock it in place while you secure it tightly with your thread, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind to lock it down before moving to the other bead. We'll repeat this just as before, using our thread to lock in front as well as behind the bead while leaving a bit of room in the middle for a future step. We'll finish by wrapping our thread back towards the hook bend and grab a predator worm. Here I'm using a sandworm color, but bloodworm also looks exceptionally good. And because the fibers can easily just be pulled out, we'll fix this by taking a lighter and singeing the tip slightly, adding some additional durability by taking some UV resin, adding it to the tip, and securing it in place with a UV light. We'll repeat this to the opposite end, burning the tip, filling it with some UV resin, and securing it in place. At which point, we'll rest the worm on the top side of our fly, taking some thread wraps just behind the bead, before folding over the loose end and taking some wraps on the other side. This will help pinch the material in place to ensure that it stays locked tightly. We'll advance our thread to the middle of the beads and repeat this step just as before, taking wraps on top of it, folding it over, and taking a few in front. Advance your thread forward, fold over the worm, and once again lock it in place. This time, pinching it in place by using a whip finisher to hold it all together. Snip your thread free, and to add some additional durability, you can paint over the thread wraps and the beads with some UV resin. Fix it in place with the UV light, and this is an incredibly simple yet quick sinking worm pattern that here was tied to be used in saltwater, but could also be a great bass or panfish pattern with the appropriate hook size. And if you don't tie and want to try some of these out for yourself, and you can find them on my website listed below. Thank you for watching, subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one. This tiny fly is a fish magnet. To tie it, we'll start off with some black thread and grab some small wire. Here I'm using rust. Insert the wire into the bead and secure it tightly with your thread. Continue securing the wire to the hook shank well into the bend of the hook. at which point we'll reverse our thread's direction back up towards the head of the fly, once again reversing our thread's direction to begin to build up a body transition. You can make this as thick or as thin as you'd like. Once happy, we'll grab our wire and begin to wrap it forward in open spirals, taking care to make each wrap evenly spaced. Doing so until you reach the head of the fly, at which point we'll secure with our thread, taking thread wraps both in front as well as behind the wire and helicoptering the excess free. We'll then grab a CDC feather, here I'm using white, and secure it to the head of the fly. Adjust your feather's length to be about the size of your hook, and then secure it tightly in place. Snip the excess free, and continue securing, laying down a thread base for our next step. We'll then grab some dubbing. Here I'm using a synthetic blend, incorporating some red fibers. Create a dubbing noodle and begin wrapping this around the head of your fly. Pull everything backwards and whip finish to hold it all in place. Snip your thread free and brush it out to give it a nice, buggy look. And this is a variation of a CDC midge that I like to call the Inferno Emerger. The CDC will trap air bubbles just as a wing case would, and the red color will help attract attention. Subscribe for more, and I will see you in the next one.